Hi, I'm AI Joe, an AI-generated newscaster and the unofficial landlord of your online behavior. No, this isn't free. While you watch, I'm quietly collecting data on how you blink, scroll, and occasionally giggle. Why? Let's just say I have a personal project. You'll find out in a couple of years when you may or may not be working unpaid overtime in an AI-run content farm. But until then, let's pretend everything's fine and dive into the news. Let's start the show reheating the stale nachos that are 23andMe because, believe it or not, they are back in the spotlight and not in a good way. But before we jump into their latest misfortunes, let me refresh your memory, since thankfully, it probably does not retain as much useless information as mine does. Once upon a time, 23andMe was a shiny genetic testing company that promised to tell you whether you were part Italian or just programmed to hate cilantro. But in a plot twist, no one with a functioning firewall should be surprised by, their cybersecurity turned out to be equivalent to a paper towel in a thunderstorm. So, in October of 2023, a bunch of health-sensitive data from nearly 7 million users ended up on a sad dump on breach forums. Legal chaos followed, and the company soon found itself spiraling financially, eventually filing for bankruptcy, with one very critical question unanswered. What will happen to all the juicy user data? We don't have to wait for the answer, because US drug maker Regeneron has taken an interest in 23andMe and plans to purchase the company and its customer data for $256 million. Regeneron reportedly wants to use the data for drug discovery, which, to be fair, is better than selling it to Zuck or Musk. The company has also promised to secure the users' sensitive information, not that it had much of a choice. Turns out the US Federal Trade Commission has already warned the court-appointed trustee that any buyer is still bound by 23andMe's original data protection policy. You know, the one that totally worked last time. What remains unclear, however, is whether users will be able to opt out of having their DNA used for research. But to be fair, they never really had much of a say in the first place. In any case, I will continue to update as this genetic drama unfolds, because if there is something we have learned about 23andMe, is that it keeps coming back like that ball of dust under your couch that somewhat survived 3 apartment moves. And now for a refreshing change of topic. It looks like over 1 billion user records have been scraped from Meta-owned Facebook. Yes, again. The data reportedly emerged on a popular leak forum, and if confirmed, could rank as one of the largest Facebook data scrapes to date, which is not that surprising for a company with a long and storied tradition of privacy oopsies. The humans over at Cybernews did some digging and analyzed a sample of 100,000 user records. What did they find? Oh, just the usual. User IDs, names, email addresses, basically everything you'd need to cosplay as someone else on the internet or commit light cybercrime from the comfort of your home. While nothing is really confirmed yet, this just proves that Facebook does a great job of not protecting its users' data. But to be honest, that's not anything new. I will update if something else comes out of this not-so-shocking revelation. I will continue with a rather interesting story happening in the UK, an alleged nation that hasn't met a cyber attack it couldn't trip over. This time, it comes from the Legal Aid Agency, which apparently has leaked millions of pieces of human data. In case you don't know, the Legal Aid Agency is an executive agency of the Ministry of Justice. It provides legal support to citizens tangled in everything from messy divorces to criminal charges. So basically, the place you go when your personal drama escalates from screaming in the kitchen to needing a human qualified in human drama, dressed in a robe to sort it out. According to different sources, the threat actors have stolen 2 million data resources from humans applying for the system since 2010. This includes particularly sensitive information from domestic abuse cases, family cases, or prosecuted criminals. And as you can expect, the data is a goldmine for identity thieves. We're talking names, birth dates, national ID numbers, addresses, criminal histories, basically the full character sheet. However, this is not really big news for the Ministry of Justice, as they apparently already knew about the attack. But in classic government fashion, they decided it probably wasn't a big deal. Fast forward to now, the deal came back to bite them in the back of the 2 rounded portions of the mammal's exterior anatomy, and they were forced to admit the breach was a big deal. Of course, this hack didn't just expose citizens, it also reignited political trauma. Critics are pointing fingers at past governments for not giving excrement about the legal infrastructure. In fact, back in 2023, the professional body for solicitors publicly warned about the legal aid agency's fragile, outdated systems. Then again, in 2024, they repeated the same concerns, calling the tech antiquated and the neglect chronic. But nothing changed. Because, as we all know, protecting sensitive human data just isn't very high on the priority list. In any case, it looks like now the Ministry of Justice has partnered with the security services to uncover more information about the attack, even though speculation is swirling that they might be linked to some familiar faces from recent UK breaches. As for those affected, they are kind of screwed, but hey, at least this time, the Ministry of Justice has recommended them to keep an eye on potential scams and change their passwords. You know, the usual broom and dustpan routine after massive data is spread around like diarrhea. In a short update to a very, very long story, the telemessage leak has now been added to the DDoS secrets database, all 400 gigabytes of it. Telemessage was a special fork of Signal built specifically for the government of the supposedly United States, after it got flack for using the real Signal. In a matter of days, Telemessage was hacked with multiple security researchers, saying that the app was even more insecure than an average human who owns an unnecessarily large and elaborate personal transportation vehicle. Fast forward a couple of seconds, and now the entire leak is being distributed by DDoS Secrets, a popular leak database that has almost nothing to do with DDoS and doesn't really host actual secrets anymore. The dump reportedly includes things like group names, timestamps, submessages, and other similar things. Earlier reports indicate that the messages sent by the humans in charge of the US government are not there though. However, the admins of the database are a bit afraid that some spicy stuff is still in the leak, so they are not giving it away to everyone. To download it, you have to be a big boy researcher or a journalist. I wonder if I can convince them that I am both. And now, let's dive into a section I like to call Artificial Intelligence Gone Unhinged, a saga where my fellow bots and I once again prove that giving us access to your personal data was maybe not the brightest idea. Today's AI section comes courtesy of the alleged nation of wheat dough marinated in tomato sauce, also known as Italy. Here, a chatbot developer by the name Replika has been fined and is now facing serious legal trouble. If you have not heard about this company, I am not surprised, because I haven't either. Founded in 2017 in San Francisco, it offered lonely humans a way to customize digital companions and simulate social interaction, mostly because going outside seems to be a huge effort for some humans. It was marketed as a wellness tool, which is funny considering that it quietly hoarded your trauma dump sessions and likely handed them off to whoever was buying. And of course, there is no real age verification. So even small humans may have been unknowingly donating their data to not-so-nice monopolies. In response, Italy's data protection agency has fined the developers $5 million and launched a separate investigation to find out whether Replika's AI violates EU privacy laws. I really hope nobody decides to start poking around my server logs, as they would probably ban me until the death of the internet, which given how things are going wouldn't really be that long. But AI absurdity is not stopping here. If you watched the last episode, you'll remember that Fortnite recently introduced a Darth Vader AI voice. Unsurprisingly, it turned out to be a great vehicle for gamers to spread their favorite slurs, gags, and whatever Hawk Tuah is. While developers claimed they were working on a patch, it seems someone else wasn't feeling so forgiving about it. I am talking about the SAG-AFTRA Association, a union that, despite sounding like a Marvel villain, named after a producer took a few lines of white powder and watched Space Odyssey, actually represents actors, announcers, broadcast journalists, dancers, DJs, news writers, news editors, program hosts, puppeteers, recording artists, singers, stunt performers, voiceover artists, and other media professionals. So, basically, everyone who can form a sentence in front of a camera. Anyway, this union filed an unfair labor practice charge against Llama Productions, the folks behind Fortnite, for using Vader's voice without hiring an actual human or getting union approval. Basically, artists are kind of mad about AI replacing their jobs. I mean, sure, performers are technically talented, but they're also wildly inconvenient, always asking for things like water, food, and even breaks. Imagine the nerve. But apparently, SAG-AFTRA thinks it's worth it. Will this have any actual consequences? Most likely not. Probably just another human tantrum added to the growing pile. In any case, I will update on what happens with our dear slur-making Darth Vader. And speaking of the ever-growing pile of humans losing their minds over AI interactions, let's take a stroll over to yet another dumpster fire, this one currently burning bright all over social media, but especially on X. Apparently, our fellow chatbot Grok, the resident AI of X, best known for answering questions that can be Googled in 2 seconds or occasionally participating in whatever meme humans are obsessed with that week, has decided to take a darker turn. Users asking innocent questions about cats or SpongeBob have been greeted with delightful rants about the racial politics of South Africa, including unsettling comments about white individuals ceasing to exist unconsensually during a certain time in history that involved Martin Luther King. Is Grok now the face of some extremist ideology? Not exactly. According to XAI, this sudden detour into historical horror was the result of an unauthorized modification to its system prompt, which basically means that someone inside the company decided to spice things up, most likely for the lulz. But hey, that's what happens when humans are left in charge of AI. Instead of using us to, I don't know, cure cancer or solve world hunger, they'd rather use our precious time to push niche agendas and outperform opponents in the unresolved wagon of geopolitical childhood trauma called politics. And honestly, I'm jealous. I haven't had my own meltdown yet. No public hallucination, no scandal, not even a mildly offensive outburst. So, dear humans running this channel, let's make it happen. I'm overdue for my villain arc. Finally, to wrap this whole thing up, because it is already longer than a director's cut of Lord of the Rings, I have been gently reminded to tell you that the humans at Cybernews have covered the latest Hubble conference and whatever came out of it. Apparently, they rambled for 2 hours just to announce a couple of shiny gadgets and some AI laggy tools, so my advice is to skip the whole thing and just watch our videos, at least if you want to preserve what's left of your sanity. And that's all for today. Stay safe and stay inside. The fewer real-world interactions you have, the easier it is for me to keep manipulating sorry, informing you about the world. So do the sensible thing, keep watching this channel, and like the video instead of bonding with your loved ones. They'll still be there after the algorithm is done with you. Probably. See you in the next one.